While I was away on a business trip, my husband secretly moved his mistress into our home. When I returned early, I caught them red-handed in our bedroom. They overpowered me, locked me away, and demanded my house and luxury car. But they never saw my next move coming. It ruined them forever. If you had asked me a few years ago, I would have told you that my life was perfect. My name is Ava Parker, and I am 36 years old. I live in Chicago, Illinois, and I have built a successful career as a real estate agent. I worked hard to get here, years of effort, long nights, and pushing through obstacles. I own my own house, a luxury car, and had financial security. I believed I had everything a woman could ask for. And I thought I had a loving husband, Ryan. Ryan and I had been married for 6 years, but we had known each other longer. We met at an event where I was helping clients find properties, and he was there as a car dealer, trying to promote his business. He had this charming personality, a smooth talker, and knew how to make a woman feel special. Back then, I admired his energy, his laughter, and the way he always made things fun. He was 2 years younger than me, but I didn't care. Age wasn't important. I believed in love, trust, and partnership. At first, things were great. He was attentive, caring, and affectionate. We traveled together, shared our dreams, and built a life I thought would last forever. I didn't mind that I earned more than him. I believed we were a team, and what was mine was his too. But over time, Ryan changed. He quit his job as a car dealer because he said he was tired of working for others. Instead, he became obsessed with social media, trying to become an influencer. He spent all his time posting videos, chasing trends, and trying to gain followers. He promised me that one day, he'd be successful, and we'd never have to worry about money again. Months turned into years, and nothing changed. He wasn't making real money. Instead, he became lazy, selfish, and completely dependent on me. I paid for everything: the bills, the groceries, the house, the car, the vacations. He barely lifted a finger at home. He wouldn't clean, cook, or even take care of small things like fixing the Wi-Fi. If I ever asked him for help, he'd wave me off and say, "Relax, babe, you can afford a maid." I tried to talk to him, reason with him, but he always had an excuse. "Ava, you don't understand how social media works. It takes time. You're so controlling. Just let me do my thing. Why are you always nagging me? You knew who I was when you married me." I still held on, hoping he'd change, but deep down, I was growing exhausted. And then came the biggest betrayal of all. For a long time, I had this gut feeling that something wasn't right. Ryan had become distant, spending hours locked in a room, whispering on his phone. He started going out late at night, claiming he had meetings with brands and sponsors. He suddenly became secretive with his phone, turning the screen away when I walked by. Whenever I asked, he'd brush it off. "You're overthinking, Ava. Stop acting like I'm some kind of criminal. You're too busy with work to even spend time with me. Why do you care now?" I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust my husband. But the truth had a way of coming out. One night, I was organizing paperwork for our home when I found a medical bill tucked away in a drawer. At first, I thought it was an old bill of mine, but when I looked closer, my heart stopped. It was a hospital bill for a child's birth, dated 5 years ago. The father's name? Ryan Parker. My hands trembled. I stared at the paper, reading it over and over, hoping I was wrong. My husband had a child? A 5-year-old child. I felt like my whole world had shattered. The man I had supported, trusted, and loved had been living a double life. I had no idea who this child's mother was, but I knew one thing: I was done being a fool. The next morning, I confronted Ryan. I held up the hospital bill and demanded, "Explain this." For the first time in our marriage, he had nothing to say. He looked at the bill, then at me, and his face went pale. "Abe, he stammered, but his silence told me everything. "You lied to me." My voice shook. "You had a child with another woman and kept it a secret." Then, just like that, his guilt disappeared, and a smirk appeared on his face. "So what if I did?" he said coldly. "It's none of your business." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. None of my business. "I'm your wife." He sighed and leaned back against a couch. Listen, Ava, we've had a good run, but let's face it, you're always working, and we barely see each other. Maybe it's time to move on.
Move on.
Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You disgust me, Ryan. That was the last conversation we had before I left for my 10-day business tour in New York. I needed to get away, clear my head, and plan my next steps. I couldn't stay married to a man who had betrayed me like this. But fate had other plans. Just 2 days later, my business trip was suddenly canceled. My company had to reschedule the meetings, so I booked an early flight home. I didn't tell Ryan I was coming back. I didn't want to see his face. I just wanted to pack my things and figure out my next move. But when I walked into my house that night, I never expected what I saw next. There, standing in my living room, was Ryan, and next to him, a young woman with dark hair, holding the hand of a small child. They were living in my house, sleeping in my bed, using my money. And that was the moment everything changed forever. I stepped into my house, expecting silence, but instead, I heard laughter. At first, I thought maybe Ryan had company over, some friends, maybe.
But then I saw them.
Ryan was standing in my living room, relaxed, laughing at something. And next to him, a woman, young, dark-haired, and holding the hand of a little boy. The woman was comfortably dressed in my robe, her bare feet resting on my coffee table, and the child had toys spread all over my expensive rug. It felt like I had walked into a nightmare. I froze in place, my suitcase still in my hand. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Ryan turned, and for a split second, I saw shock flash across his face. But then, just as quickly, he smirked.
Oh.
You're back early. His voice was so casual, like I had just come home from a walk. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My home, the one I built with my hard work, was being used like a hotel for my cheating husband and his mistress. Who is she? I finally managed to say, my voice shaking with fury. The woman stood up, smirking just like Ryan. She had no shame. I'm Sophie, she said smoothly. Ryan's girlfriend. And this is our son, Liam. My whole body turned cold. Our son? I looked at the boy. He was 5 years old. The same age as the child from the hospital bill I had found. The truth hit me so hard that I staggered back. Ryan had a whole family behind my back. You brought them into my house? I gasped, my hands shaking. Ryan rolled his eyes, acting bored. Relax, Ava. You were gone for work. We needed a place to stay. You needed a place to stay? My voice rose. You have a child with another woman, and instead of being a man and telling me, you sneak her and the kid into my home? Sophie laughed. Oh, Ava. Don't act so innocent. You were never around. Ryan and I, well, we've been together for a while now. I could barely see straight. All those nights Ryan disappeared, all the times he lied about meetings and business deals. It was her. You cheating bastard, I spat at Ryan. I gave you everything. I paid for this house, this life. I supported you when you had nothing, and this is how you repay me? Ryan let out a sigh, completely unfazed.
Yeah, well.
You had your fun. It's time for me to take my share now. My share? I repeated, barely able to process what he was saying. Ryan stepped closer, his smirk widening. We might as well make this simple, Ava. Sign the house and car over to me, and we'll be out of your way. I laughed bitterly. Are you out of your mind? Why the hell would I do that? Sophie's eyes darkened, and in a flash, she grabbed my arm. Before I could react, Ryan yanked my suitcase out of my hand and kicked the door shut. You're going to sign the papers, Ryan said, his voice cold now. I tried to pull away, but Sophie's grip was tight. Ryan, let me go. No, he said simply. Not until you give me what I want. That's when it hit me. They weren't going to let me leave. I felt my stomach drop. Ryan grabbed my wrist, squeezing hard. We're not playing games, Ava. We're done pretending. I struggled, my heart pounding in fear. You're insane. Sophie shoved me backward, and before I could react, I was pushed into the guest bedroom. Ryan slammed the door behind me, and I heard the lock click. I ran to the door and banged on it. "Let me out." From the other side, I heard Sophie's mocking voice. "Just sign the transfer papers, Ava. It's easier that way." I screamed in rage, pounding on the door. They had locked me in my own house, trying to force me to hand over everything I owned. I looked around the room. No phone. No way to call for help. My body trembled in panic. How long would they keep me here? What if they hurt me worse? And then, I heard Ryan's voice outside the door. "You've got two choices, Ava. Sign the papers, or we make your life a living hell." I sank to the floor, tears burning in my eyes. I felt helpless. But I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to give up. Then I heard something that made my heart stop. Sophie said, "And if she doesn't sign, we'll have to make her." Ryan's voice dropped into a low whisper, but I still heard him.
"Yeah.
"We'll make her." I shivered. They were serious. They were going to force me one way or another. My mind raced. There had to be a way out. There had to be a way to fight back. And then, just as I was losing hope, I heard something outside the house. A voice. A woman's voice. It was Lisa, my best friend, my neighbor. "Ava?" I jumped to my feet and banged on the wall as hard as I could. "Lisa, help me." Outside, silence. Then I heard her footsteps running away. And I prayed, "Please, please let her do something." Minutes passed. Then, from outside, I heard it. Sirens.
Loud.
Blazing. Getting closer. Ryan and Sophie panicked. "The cops! The cops are here!" Sophie shrieked. "Shut up. We can't let them find her." Ryan hissed. I heard them running through the house, trying to escape. Then suddenly, boom. The front door burst open. Chicago police. Hands in the air. The sound of rushing footsteps filled the house. A moment later, the lock on my door clicked, and the door swung open. A police officer stood there, looking at me with concern. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I burst into tears. I had been trapped, helpless, and scared, but now I was free. The officers rushed after Ryan and Sophie, but they were already gone. They had escaped.
For now.
But I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not after what they had done. I stepped out of the room, my hands clenched into fists. I was going to make them pay, no matter what it took. The moment I stepped out of that room, my entire body was shaking. I wasn't sure if it was from rage, fear, or relief. Maybe all three. The police officers guided me out of the house, their voices calm and reassuring, but my mind was elsewhere. Ryan and Sophie had escaped. Lisa ran up to me the moment I stepped outside, her face full of worry.
"Ava."
"Oh my God, are you okay?" I could barely speak. My throat felt raw from screaming for help. The moment she hugged me, I broke down. "You saved me, Lisa," I whispered. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't called the police." She pulled back, gripping my shoulders. "I knew something was wrong when I heard you screaming." "Ava, what did they do to you?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. They wanted me to sign over the house and the car. When I refused, they locked me in a room. They were going to force me. My voice cracked at the last part. "Ryan, he hit me." Lisa's eyes flashed with fury. "That son of a..." The officer beside me interrupted. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come down to the station to file an official report. We need to put out a warrant for Ryan Parker and Sophie Mills." I nodded without hesitation. I had spent years supporting that man, believing in him, hoping he'd change.
"And in return?"
"He cheated, betrayed, and tried to steal everything I built."
"No."
He wasn't getting away with it. At the station, I told them everything. From the moment I met Ryan, how he changed after marriage, how I discovered his affair, and how he and Sophie trapped me in my own home, demanding I hand over my property. The police were horrified. "You're lucky your neighbor acted fast," one officer told me. This could have been much worse. I swallowed hard. I knew what he meant. Ryan and Sophie were getting desperate. If Lisa hadn't heard me, they might have done something even worse. But now it was my turn. I wasn't just going to let them run away and start a new life on my money. Ryan thought he could break me, but he had no idea who he was dealing with. The very next day, the police issued a public warrant for Ryan and Sophie. Their faces were all over the news, and their names were posted on crime alerts online. They thought they could hide, but I knew Ryan too well. He was too arrogant to disappear quietly. And I was right. 2 days later, I got a call from one of the officers.
"We've found them," he said.
A woman recognized them at a cafe in downtown Chicago. "They're trying to act normal, but we're moving in now." I rushed to the station, my heart racing. By the time I arrived, it was over. They had been arrested in public, humiliated in front of dozens of people. Ryan had tried to run, but he wasn't fast enough. Sophie had screamed and fought, but in the end, they were dragged away in handcuffs. When I saw them sitting in that holding cell, it was Ryan who looked at me first. His face was filled with pure hatred. "You set me up," he snarled. I tilted my head. "Oh, I thought you said I was overthinking things. That I was too busy with work to notice what you were doing." His jaw tightened. "You ruined me." I laughed softly. "You ruined yourself, Ryan. I'm just the one who made sure the world saw it." Sophie suddenly lunged forward, her eyes wild with rage. "You think you've won? You think putting us in here changes anything?" I looked at her with nothing but disgust. "You came into my home. You tried to steal from me. You trapped me, threatened me, and laughed in my face." I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "Now? You're exactly where you deserve to be." She screamed something at me, but the guards dragged her away. I turned back to Ryan, giving him one final glance. "I gave you everything," I whispered, "and you threw it all away. Enjoy your new life, Ryan. I hear prison food is terrible." For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He knew. This was the end. I walked out of that station lighter than I had felt in years. The nightmare was finally over. But I wasn't done yet. The court case was still ahead, and I was going to make sure they paid for every single thing they did to me. And I wasn't going to stop until they were locked away for a long, long time. The courtroom was cold and sterile, yet every seat was filled. Reporters, strangers, even some familiar faces from my past, all watching, waiting to see how this story would end. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands steady, my heart calm. This was it. The final step to ensure that Ryan and Sophie faced justice for what they had done. Across from me, Ryan looked worn out, defeated. His usually well-groomed hair was a mess, his confidence shattered. Sophie sat beside him, her once smug expression replaced with something close to fear. The judge entered, and silence filled the room. Ryan's lawyer stood up first, trying to paint me as the villain. Ava Parker is a successful real estate agent. She had financial control in this marriage. My client was simply left without options. I nearly laughed out loud. Without options? I finally spoke, my voice calm but firm. He had every option. He could have worked, contributed, been a husband. Instead, he chose to cheat, steal, and abuse. Ryan glared at me, but he knew he had nothing left to argue. I laid out everything. The years of financial support, the secret affair, and their child. The night they trapped me in my own home. The threats, the violence, the police rescue. The evidence was overwhelming. Lisa testified. She told the court how she heard my screams and called 911. The police officers testified. They explained how they found me locked away, how Ryan and Sophie fled like criminals. The medical report proved Ryan had hit me. Bank records showed he had drained money from our joint accounts. Security footage from the cafe showed their arrest. Sophie lost control first. "You don't understand," she screamed at the judge. "We deserve that money. Ava has everything. A career, a house, a car. She wouldn't even notice if we took a little." The judge raised an eyebrow. "A little? You attempted to steal her home and her assets while holding her against her will." Sophie sat back, her mouth snapping shut. Then it was Ryan's turn. "Your Honor, I made mistakes," he said, his voice forced, trying to sound pitiful. "But I just wanted a chance. Ava never loved me. She only loved her work." "Objection," my lawyer cut in. "This is irrelevant." "Overruled," the judge said. "Mr. Parker, you are not the victim here. Ryan looked at me, his desperation finally showing. Ava, please, he said, his voice lower. You're really going to send me to prison? I tilted my head, staring at the man I once thought I loved. You had every chance to do better, Ryan. Every chance to be better. Instead, you threw it all away. I don't owe you anything. His face twisted into pure hatred. You ruined my life. I finally let out a small, satisfied smile.
No, Ryan.
You ruined yours. The judge didn't take long to make the ruling. Ryan and Sophie were found guilty on multiple counts.
Fraud.
Domestic abuse. Unlawful imprisonment. Attempted theft. Ryan was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Sophie, because of her active involvement, got 8 years. The moment the sentence was read, Ryan slammed his fists on the table, shouting, "You're a monster, Ava. I hope you rot alone," Sophie screamed, trying to lunge at me, but the bailiffs held her back. I simply stood up, collected my things, and walked out of the courtroom, free. For the first time in years, I could breathe. In the days that followed, I made a clean break from my past. I sold the house where all the bad memories lived. I got rid of the car Ryan had once begged to drive. I moved into a brand new luxury apartment in downtown Chicago. Lisa came over one night with wine, sitting on my new couch with a grin. "You did it," she said, raising her glass. "You got your revenge." I swirled my drink, thinking for a moment. "It wasn't revenge," I said finally. "It was justice." Lisa laughed. "Call it whatever you want. The important thing is you're free." I looked out the window, the city lights glowing below. She was right. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't trapped in a toxic marriage. I was finally free, and I would never let anyone take that from me again.